Hi, I'm Corjo, WeCJ, and we're going to be going into the magical world of Eldraine, talking about the commander decks that are coming out, starting with Virture and Valor. So let's start this adventure with the Whimsical Commander being Eldraine of the Wild Court. For 2 green and a white, you get a legendary creature, Human Knight, that is a mythic. Whenever Eldraine of the Wild Court enters the battlefield or attacks, create a Virtuous Role token and attach it to another creature you control. Whenever enchantment creature you control deals combat damage to a player, draw a card, and it's a 4/4. This command is really good because it uses the new mechanic Virtuous Role, which I really like when it comes to these decks. When they do make a new mechanic, they give it to one of the commanders, so people have a tester straight out the deck. Also, this is a really good draw effect card as well, especially since the whole point of the deck is to use its abilities, and by using its abilities you draw. This commander is quite good. Now, it would not be a commander deck without a sub-commander, so the sub-commander is Eldraine Casting Director. For 1 green and a white, you get a legendary creature, Human Bard, that is a mythic. Whenever Eldraine Casting Director or another non-token creature enters the battlefield under your control, choose one. Create a Royal Roll token attached to that creature, create a Sorcery Roll token attached to that creature, create a Monster Roll attached to that creature, and here's a 2/3. This one, in my honest God opinion, is not the best. However, I do like that it still sticks to the new mechanic, but I think there could have been a little bit more. Usually when it comes to these decks, I love playing the sub-commander more than the commander, but this is a rare thing where I actually prefer the commander over the sub-commander. So what do you get in this deck? Let's go over it, starting with the creatures. In this deck, there is a total of 30 creatures that all pretty much have some form of enchantment help, enchantment gain, draw, anything to do with enchantments. There's a lot of cards when you think of an enchantment deck you will pop in the top of your head, and it is in here. Few that are not, but there's also a few random cards, but here are some of my favorite cards that are in this deck, and they're on screen now. Nickelknack Umph, Corn Spirit Dancer, Sanctum Weaver, Timber Paladin, Loomcrafter Fawn, Cetrus Champion, Umbra Mystic, Eldraine of Blossoms, Sahala Voice of Plenty, Realm Cloak Giant. Now let's go on to the spells of the deck. When it comes to this deck, there are 7 in total, which does make sense. This does seem from straight out the bat it's mainly a creature and enchantment heavy deck. But there's 5 cards which I actually want to talk about, and which is quite rare. It's usually 1 or 2. But again, Swords of Plowshares in this deck. I'm sick of that card being reprinted, but the 5 cards are on screen now. Retether, Unfinished Business, Winds of Wrath, Austri Command, Riskar's Expertise. And now we come to the second big part of the deck, the enchantments. In this deck, there's 21 enchantments, and I'm surprised about a lot of them, but I'm not shocked with all of them, and I'll put them on screen that I think are the best. Daybreak Coronet, Enchantresses Present, Timely Ward, Angelic Destiny, Bear Umbra, Indomitable Might, Songbird's Blessing, Giant Inheritance, Mantle of the Ancients. When it comes to artifacts in this deck, this is where it is very, very disappointing. There is only 2, a Solar and an Arcane Signet, which is the bare basic minimum when it comes to artifacts. So I'm not the biggest fan of the artifacts in this deck, but it does make sense why there's not many. And then finally, the lands of this deck. In this deck, there's 39 lands, and not a lot of them are kind of the best. There are some decent lands, but overall I find when it comes to these commander decks that the lands are always the weakest. I'm not expecting like the biggest and best lands. However, with the price of these products, I do expect just a tiny bit more. I remember in one of the sets in Commander Masters, even though it was a lot more pricier, one deck had 3 filter lands, and I'm like, filter lands are getting to the point where they do belong. At least one belongs in one of these type of decks, but that's just my honest God opinion. But there are some lands that I'm happy they put in, and here they are on screen now. Canopy Vista, Fortified Village, Hall of Heliod's Generosity, Vitu-Ghazi the City Tree. Overall, when it comes to my thoughts and opinions of this deck, I do have to say, to me, honestly, this is a okay starting enchantment deck. but I would personally use it as rather a skeleton to build your own one, or I would use it as parts for upgrades or anything like that for a deck you're building when it comes to an enchantment deck. There are way more better enchantment commanders, way more better enchantment cards. This seems to be a very basic standard enchantment deck, which I'm not complaining about. It is good for what you buy, but I know most people that have, like, if you're new at Magic the Gathering, this is a decent start to have your first ever enchantment deck. But when it comes to veteran players or players that have played for a long time, I do see people not buying this because it's not worth it to upgrades or a skeleton thing. It's an okay commander deck. It could have been better, but at the same time it would have been difficult. So now that I've gone over the entire deck, let me know what you think in the comments down below of this deck. What cards would you have liked to see in this deck? While you're down there, remember to like, subscribe and follow me on all my social media, and I'll see you in the next video. If you like this video, I will have the reveal trailer here, where the people that revealed it talked about it in more depth. I have a Is It Worth It here, and a playlist here.